Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show on intellectualradio.com. I'm your host and facilitator, Mark Wallace, and I am excited to be here with you on this Monday evening on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio. And of course, we are on YouTube, Facebook, as well as we are on Instagram. We are no longer broadcasting on X, formerly Twitter, because I refuse to pay the conspirator or the cohort of the thug in chief. And I refuse to pay money to support that person or any entity that they have knowingly. So we are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we are on YouTube. And soon we may be on another outlet. We'll be talking about that more in the coming days. I don't even want to talk about the name of it. And so until we know more about it, but I'm excited about it, and or at least excited about the possibility or the potential of it, that we will be broadcasting on other outlets. Now, I would like to ask you, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, would like to ask you to go to our YouTube channel, and you can look for Mark Wallace, The People's Show, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There is no cost. We don't ask for monthly payments or a monthly subscription or any of that. We just want to be able to get information out, get the content out to the viewing audience and to the listening audience. We want to be able to make sure that we get you the factual information so that you can be informed about what is happening in our country, what is happening in our communities, our cities, our counties. This is about empowering Black people to be informed, properly informed, so that we can organize ourselves together to assume the power that we have the potential to assume. Not to be distracted about all of what is going on as we see what's happening. And because that is going to ultimately fail. So there is scripture that says that what people do intend for bad, God uses it for good. And I am encouraging anybody who may be feeling despair about what we are witnessing in the degradation of our democratic norms and what we have established and made better up until the time that we have the occupant who thinks that they're in a palace that is one to themselves. Well, be not dismayed. Be not dismayed. Don't be distracted whatsoever. I promise you that will not stand. Oh, they may be able to do and exact some of the inflictions of bastardizing our government and our policies and our processes. And that may be giving some people who support that some sense of feel good, that don't really understand how government works, don't really understand the responsibility of government, or somehow have been convinced that this person who occupies the presidency, this convicted felon in chief who occupies the presidency, that somehow they have gotten away, that they have escaped accountability. They have not escaped accountability. And somehow they potentially think that they are now all powerful. Well, there's always the arrogance that comes before the fall. But what I want for those of us who really care about progress, to not be dismayed. Don't be in despair. Don't even be depressed. Yes, we have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant so that we can push back and that we can fight back, because we will ultimately prevail. What the thug in chief is doing, and him being the puppet or the puppeteer for the authors and directors of Project 2025, because please understand this. This is a very dumb person. This is a dumb person, notwithstanding that he came from a father who amassed some wealth and passed it on to him. If he had zero and had to start from scratch, we wouldn't even know his name. So please don't get caught up to thinking that there has to be something significant about him because he wouldn't be as wealthy as he is. There are people who are wealthy not because they are people of great moral character, courage, or consciousness. Not because they are people of great intelligence. Everything about that individual, he's been sued, his corporations have been sued, his company has been sued, he and his children, companies that they have been involved with have been sued and charged and convicted. The companies have been. His children barely escaped being charged, indicted. So they're no angels either. They have the benefit of white privilege. That's what they have the benefit of. Now, and for those people who support it and to think that this is the better direction for our country, I'm sorry for them. I'm sorry for them, because until something that they do impacts the lives of their supporters, of his supporters, and that may not happen right away, because the things that they are doing, that they're setting up, as I heard Joy Reid says, they were talking about stop the steal. That was their slogan for the 2020 election that they lost. Well, what they're setting up right now is for the start of the biggest steal that they are trying to perpetrate for them and their cronies, that you are going to pay for. And the you that I'm talking about are you that supported this as being better for our country. He played on your emotions, he played on your frustration, and he certainly played on, or I shouldn't say him, they used him to play on your ignorance because he's not that bright. He does not have that kind of intelligence. He is the figurehead, obviously, the personality that they have been able, that represents their bigotry, that represents their hate, that represents their vitriol. That's what he represents. And they finally have a participant who finally reached the pinnacle to occupy the palace to carry out their beliefs. And this idea of suggesting that Republicans are afraid of Donald Trump. And this is not some equivalent of true conservatism, because that's not what he represents. I'm not talking about people who are actual conservatives, who have their political ideology, but they're conservatives, but they are Americans, and they believe in the rule of law, and they believe in the process of our government. I'm not talking about them. So when I talk about the so-called Republicans that support Donald Trump, I'm not talking about the true conservatives. These people are enablers. These people are the co-conspirators because those people believe in exactly what Donald, the felon-in-chief Trump, is purveying. They believe it, they support it, they want it, they just have never had the platform to be able to get to the palace to perpetrate their real beliefs. And now they have somebody in the palace that is dumb enough, that is drunk on power and attention, that all you have to do is stroke him with a Dove ice cream bar and he'll do whatever it is you want, because that's what he needs because of his own insecurities. So what I'm saying to you, don't be dismayed, don't be distracted, and certainly don't be fooled to think that somehow this person is going to put and improve upon all of the work that the Democratic Congress and the Democratic president and vice president over the last 4 years have put together that are actual benefits that the average American and Black Americans are benefiting from, that they are now trying to roll back. This attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, even the attempt to reverse teaching at the military academy in their classes about the Tuskegee Airmen, which of course they had to reverse. All of this is a signal that there are a group of people who run this operation. This is not an operation being run by Donald Trump. This is an operation that is being run by these people who are the masterminds behind the so-called conservative movement. They are not the true conservatives. They are not those people who really were conservative, like the Jack Kemps of the day. What you have is a combination of MAGA and the Tea Party. And the Tea Party has morphed into what you are seeing now. So what I want to get for us to really understand is that we do not need to fall into despair, depression, or that is over, because it's not over. It's not over. But what we have to do is we've got to organize ourselves so that we can fight back every area that we are. Those of us who actually care, those of us who really care, not about those who hide behind some sort of veil, because they're easily exposed too, whether they're black or white. And the confused, misled black people who believe that this was the way to better. Unfortunately, these are people who are easily manipulated because they don't read, they don't understand government, they don't understand how government works, they don't understand government processes. So they're easily to be manipulated, easily. Obviously, because this is what they thought is better. They are going to find out that it is not. This is not making our country move in a more positive direction. So, and they're going to find out that what this is about is the biggest power grab and grift for a preferential few people, and you are not included in the benefactors. You are included as the payers for the benefactors. That is precisely what this is. It's precisely what this is. And there will be people that you're going to find out. You are going to find out that this was not the direction to go. You're going to find out when black people are being thrown out of their jobs. You're going to find out one fifth. Let me give you an example, because most of you don't know what diversity, equity, inclusion is and why it is in place. The executive order was put in place by Lyndon Baines Johnson, but why it is in place and why it is in place, one fifth of all of the contract workers have just been announced through an executive order where Donald Trump has ordered that all diversity, equity, inclusion, and all of those who are contract workers are to be put on paid administrative leave. That is so that they can set up to terminate them. And you know who's going to get hurt the most by the largest numbers? Are black people. Because the Biden administration unbundled government contracts, the appropriations, government contracts, where private companies bid and are awarded contracts to do business for and with the federal government. When Donald Trump came into office, his administration bundled contracts so that only major capacity companies could bid on those contracts. And they're doing it again. That's what that is all about. And many of you who supported this, not saying, or whoever supported this, but there were some people from our community who supported this out of ignorance. Now, when I use the term ignorance, all ignorance means is without knowledge. You're acting without knowledge, without proper information. So you have people who, I am a Democrat. I am a on purpose Democrat. That doesn't mean that I am a loyalist to the Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to stay with the Democratic Party. But what I also know is that there are some parts of the Democratic Party that we have to fix. I'm going to get to that. I don't want to get off of where I am. But those people who are so hung up that they allow for their frustration to impede their future and the future for their children, the future for their grandchildren, and the future for others because of your frustration, and you think that jumping out of the frying pan into the fire is a better alternative, because that's precisely what you've done. That is not going to benefit. Now, if your life is benefited and the life of the larger society is being altered, then your life is not benefited. Your life is not benefited. So you can fall into all of the name calling of Kamala Harris. You can fall into the name calling of Joe Biden, and you can, throw out these decisions that Joe Biden was a part of, and that every other member of Congress was also a part of, with the exception of 8 people. But it's not good for progress. I certainly hope that you don't treat your family that same way. That if somebody in your family that you got angry with, that you turn your back on your entire family without trying to reconcile, or at least work out or hold the people who were responsible accountable, and that you didn't abandon your entire family and went and jumped into the camp of an enemy because you are pissed off with someone who upset you in your family. Well, they are showing us, and you, because they said they would. There's no surprise to it. Everything that Project 2025 and the authors of Project 2025, they have said to us what they are going to do. I played for you all some of the some of the clips of, remember the guy by the name of what is it, Jeffrey or Jesse Vogt, who is now in the Trump administration. He was in the Trump administration in 2016. He was one of the lead authors of Project 2025. And there were these two reporters. This is how smart they are. This is just how smart they are. This is the guy who was in charge of the budget, I believe it is, or something like that. I forget what his title was, but he did an interview with two reporters that he thought he was doing an interview with some MAGA Republican donors. And he sat down in this undercover report or undercover investigation to tell you exactly what they are planning to do. Everything that they're planning to do. So when Trump, remember when Trump lied and said he didn't know anything about Project 2025? Remember that? I don't know what it is, and some of the things that they have are radical and just atrocious, and I don't agree with it. Well, everything that he is doing, you can find supported in Project 2025, the 922-page manifesto. So I'm not surprised at any of these things that he is doing. I'm not sure why people are acting as though that they're surprised. Oh, they are grotesque. They're awful. But we can't pretend to be surprised. Or did you not believe that he was going to go along with what they said? Who spends their time putting together a 922-page manifesto if they have no intentions of using it? The only way that they can't use it is that they don't get the power to do so. They have been given the power to do so with that 922-page manifesto. Now, these clips are even more pervasive because it is now, we are 1 week into the felon in chief's 4-year term of occupying the palace. Who said that he didn't know anything about Project 2025 and didn't agree with the radical ideas of Project 2025, which are all being signed on to by him. I didn't know anything about Project 2025. Well, this is the scheme of the author. This is the lead author who is now in the Trump administration. Take a look.
This year has been predominantly...
Nobody cares about the fact that we've got a bunch of young black and brown men in prison. That argument is not working. What I suggest we do as African Americans is own this issue.
Wrong clip. Let me go back here just a second. Let me get them in order. Okay. Here is Jason Vogt talking about, he's talking about the fifth year, which is now, right? He's talking about the fifth year of the Trump administration, year 5 of the Trump administration, referring to now.
This year has been predominantly now getting ready for a year 5 of a Trump administration. We've got about 350 different documents that are regulations and things of that nature.
And what are they doing? Listen to it again. Take a listen.
This year has been predominantly now getting ready for a year 5 of a Trump administration. We've got about 350 different documents that are regulations and things of that nature.
Okay, so 350 regulations. Well, they signed what, about 250 some odd executive orders deregulating. Some of them have not gone into effect. Some of them are going to be challenged in court. Already one has been the challenge in court, which wasn't going to go anyway. That is of the first section of the 14th Amendment, was not going anywhere because an executive order can never supersede the Constitution or federal law. But nonetheless, they're going to throw everything that they, in their mind, that they want and that they think, they're going to throw it against the wall and see just what sticks. That's what they're going to do. This is year 5 that started over a week ago. Here is where he refers to or talks about Donald Trump and him not knowing or distancing himself from Project 2025.
Notwithstanding, I expect you to hear 10 more times from the rally, the president, distancing himself from the left's boogeyman of Project 2025.
Yeah. And you're not worried about that?
No, I'm not worried about it. And so I see what he's doing is just very, very conscious distancing himself from a brand. He's very supportive of what we do, and know that we have all manner of things that we do that's, even unrelated to Project 2025.
Sure.
So this is a clear plan by these people. So there is none of this is a surprise. Now, for those of us who are reasonable people who want to see things work and want to see things get better, we're not saying that things were perfect by no stretch. Anybody who would even, that's not even a conversation that reasonably intelligent people should even be considering. Everybody knows that there is always room to get better. That's where we have come to through these past 250 years to where we are now. We were at a very different place 50 years ago, 60 years ago. We're in some better places in terms of progress and policy. Nowhere near where we as a Black community should be. But there have been some progress. And what you have now with Project 2025 and its orchestrators rolling any of those back and undoing anything that has to do with any type of progress for the people of our communities. See, they play the long game. And some of us got sucked into it. Now, when you heard Donald Trump talking about the African American community, that I appreciate what you did, he did. He did appreciate whatever percentage went and voted for him, he did appreciate that. That is not going to be reciprocated in any type of substantive policy. He's basically saying to you, I appreciate you all falling for my okie doke. I gave you a dog whistle and you fell right in line with it. You played right into it, just the way that we needed it, just to give us enough to seize power, to go and exact what we want to exact. Now, the way we're going to repay you is that we are going to make sure that you foot the bill for the start of this deal that we are going to be doing for the people in our inner circle for which you are not included. That's all that is. And you don't have to believe it now, but you'll believe it later because they're going to show you. And they've already started to show you, just based on some of the things that they are doing in the first week to get you distracted. Now they are doing these awful so-called immigration mass deportations that they're doing. Let's see here. Yeah. So, and they have you all riled up about that, and have some people even feeling good about ICE going into communities. And of course, they use Chicago as ground zero. And you bought into it. You bought into it. They're using Chicago as ground zero, going into now talking about Holman, talking about, oh, well, you know, we can never say never. And if we have people, and if it's going to compromise the quote unquote national security, yes, we will go into schools. Yes, we will go into churches. What they are basically saying is that they do not care about the democratic norms. That's precisely what they are saying. These people don't care. And Donald Trump is going right along with their playbook. And he can go along with their playbook, and he will go along with their playbook as long as he is able to get for him and his cronies what they want: power and money. Power and money. That is what it is for them. You are not included in that as a beneficiary. You will be their benefactors, meaning that you'll be paying for what it is causing. You think that these increased military assistant raids is improving the economy? It is not. It is going to be a cost that you and I are going to pay. You somehow think that a person who buys and imports goods and has to pay a 25% tariff on those goods, you don't even get the goods. You're not even allowed to get them in until you pay the bill. So if you, as the importer, were paying $25% on $1 million worth of goods that you are importing into the company that you bought from Colombia or Canada or Mexico, you have to pay the $250,000 to the federal government before you can even get your product. And because your costs have been jacked up by 25%, guess you're not going to eat that cost. You're going to spread that cost out per unit so that you can recoup your tariff that you had to pay. That's not coming from the country that you imported the goods from, that you paid for the goods. So you'll be paying for that. Whether it's clothing, whether it's appliances, whatever it is, you'll be paying for it. But you bought into the crassness, you bought into the nastiness, because they got you hating on some people who are simply trying to escape desperate situations, and somehow they got you thinking that they coming here are going to have some negative impact on you. And they have the gall to call these people savages. Imagine this: white people who immigrated to this country, who came to this country, never filled out any type of asylum applications, but came to this country and what they did to the indigenous people here, that they destroyed their homes and took their properties, and have the gall to call people savages. Now, who are the savages exactly? Some European people who came over, never filled out an asylum application, who came over here when some people were already here that had tilled and cultivated their land and built their homes for their families, minding their own business. And some people, some white people, came across and destroyed their homes and took their land. And they want to call and question me? And they want to question some other people and call them savages? Who's the savage? Who's the real savage? Black people have fought in every war that this country has ever put on. And some of you allow for them to put up the dog and you jump right over there in their camp. Well, you can't get in the camp. They just let you come over and vote for them, but you can't get inside. They won't be inviting you to the palace. I didn't see them invite you to have a front row seat at the inauguration. Matter of fact, I didn't even see Tim Scott or Donaldson I didn't see those two, black faces. They must have had them somewhere in the back because they needed to have, the VIP seats for the white privileged people in their circle, not you. Not no, no, as the man said, no black jobs, not even a black seat for you. With all that tap dancing that you did and talking about how much you love Donald Trump, like how much did he show that he loves you? Now, let me just say this. For those who want to support them, hey, sorry you think that that is the best path because you're misinformed. But for the rest of us, don't be discouraged. Don't be in dismay, because believe the truth, as William Colored Bryan said, that truth crush the earth will rise again. They will be exposed. And we will not retreat, and we are not going to give up. We are going to fight back. We must fight back. Hey, listen, I want to take a little minute to talk about what's coming up next month. Next month is Black History Month. I am going to, we're going to be putting some guests together, and we're going to have a panel every week next month. We're going to be doing something with one of the schools that I saw. And actually, I know the person who is the principal of that school. We're going to have him and his team on to show what they're doing in their school beyond the walls of education and really looking at holistically supporting their children. I want to have them on next month during the month of Black History. And but we're also going to be bringing on some other people to do to be guests, talking about unpacking some history about our community and how our communities are impacted. I'm trying to bring this up, but we're going to be doing a number of those next month. So we're going to be having guests on that are going to be joining us. Let's see. Oh. So I want to make sure that you all come back and join with us on next month. It's going to be really interesting information that's going to be dealing with our circumstances and situations and unpacking a whole bunch of areas as it relates to our community. Right. So we're going to be providing you with a bunch of information on the Black populations, the fact sheets that we're going to be talking about that. A lot of key impacts or key factors that impacts the Black community. And we're going to be talking about Black American views on what success in the United States is. We're going to be talking about Black American views on capitalism. We're going to be talking about race and the central identity of Black Americans. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of that. We're going to have guests on who are going to help us with the facts about that as it relates to us historically and where we are now. I want to make sure that you all join us and tune in for those programs coming up during the month of February. Also want you to remember that we are supporting 10 by 10 to Win, which is the political action committee that I founded, and serving as the chair of, that we are organizing to build our own independent democratic voting bloc so that we will have the strength and the power to impact and infiltrate the Democratic Party so that we can get the Democratic Party, and particularly here in Chicago, Cook County, and the state of Illinois, working better for our communities. You find where you are in a situation, you have your family that you are born into, and there are some members of your family that you are challenged by, and some members in your family that are not living up to their commitment and their responsibility. You don't abandon your family. You help your family members to get on track so that the entirety of your family is flowing better. You have a car that you like or enjoy, that you've made an investment in. And as that car is being utilized to transport you back and forth to work and to take your children to school and to take your children on outings and leisure time activity, well, the car develops some mechanical issues. And you have to take the car and you either take it to the repair shop to get it repaired, or do you just go and discard the car that is pretty functional car for you, doing pretty good for you? Do you take it and do you get those parts of the car that are having mechanical issues repaired? Or do you go and buy a whole new car every time that something goes wrong with your car? If I said to you, your muffler went bad, don't go and spend $300 or $400 or $500 on the muffler. Just go and buy another car and spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for another car. Even though replacing the muffler will be a lot less. And all you have to do is replace the muffler and the whole car runs better. Seems that makes more sense than just going out buying another car, because that gets to be expensive. While this car ordinarily runs pretty good. So that's where we are with the Democratic Party. There are some problems with the Democratic Party, but it's really the best thing that we have as Black people in this country. The Republican Party is not an alternative to us. Certainly not the MAGA Tea Party extremists that you have there now. They don't give a darn about equity for our community. They just showed you that. They're doing away with anything that remotely has anything to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion. So they have no concern about that at all. So what we have to do, we have to organize ourselves together so that we can repair and replace some parts of the Democratic Party so that the Democratic Party works better for us. But we have to put ourselves in a position to have the power to make those demands, to make those changes. Now, putting ourselves in position means organizing ourselves because we have the numbers, in particular here in the Chicagoland area and here in Chicago. That doesn't exist around every other area of the country where Black people live. We're about 11% of the country's total population. But we have a significant number of people in this major metropolitan region where we are in Chicago, Cook County, and in the state of Illinois, that we have enough people, registered Black Democratic voters, that we can bring together in our own Democratic Union so that we can organize and set our own pathway to making sure that whatever our demands are, that they get met. But you can't put the cart ahead of the horse. You can't talk about putting together the greatest agenda and the greatest plan, and you don't have a team to execute the plan. You can have the greatest game plan. If you are a basketball player, football player, baseball player on a baseball team, you don't have a great team. You don't have a team to implement the game plan. The game plan is only that, a game plan on paper, but you don't have any real participants to make that game plan happen. You've got to have the team. We've got to have the team. And we've got to have the team so that whatever we set the game plan is, that we can enforce the game plan with the Democratic Party. That means replacing some members of the Democratic Party that don't work well for us, or putting ourselves in a position and that those members of the Democratic Party now realize that they have to respond and respect. Let me give you an example. I did it on purpose. I called, and I have their cell phone number. I have their cell phone number. But I wanted to see what the response was going to be, if at all. I called the alderperson. I text the alderman. Never got a response from the alderman. Now, when they see me in the streets and, the shaking hands and all of that nonsense, all the pretend stuff, I wanted to see, for an example, but just as a test. And you know why they did not respond and have not responded? They didn't respond because they don't believe that we have power. They don't believe that we have the power to change their seat. They don't believe it. And for good reason. They don't have to believe it or should believe it, because we have not organized ourselves in a position to be a real threat to any of their seats, any of their positions. So therefore, they don't feel compelled to respond. There's no threat. Can't touch me. You don't have an infrastructure. You are not organized with enough people in my ward to unseat me. And like I said, for good reason that they are reasoning that way when you look at the math of it. But let's say that we had 10,000 members from that ward that was a part of the Democratic independent voting block of 10 by 10 to win. That was in that ward. I'm not even going to call the ward out. I'm going to save that because it's not right now important who the older person was. I want you to look at the structure of what I am talking about. He didn't respond. He didn't return my phone call. That's no ego buster for me. No ego buster for me. But what it is, it reveals something of what I am trying to give this picture that we can see and that we can all understand on just how we can organize ourselves. And I'm not just talking about in one ward, but I'm just giving you an example here, laying it out so that you can see exactly what it is that we have to do in order for us to get the kind of response and respect that we know that we deserve for our communities in every area of concern, whatever your concern is, if it's in education, if it's in housing, health, if it is in economics, if it's in business, if it's in the environment, if it's in agriculture, whatever the concern is, they are all important for the health and well-being and welfare of our communities. But we are not in the position of power that had I made that phone call, had I sent that text, and they knew that, wait a minute, somebody from that independent Democratic voting bloc, they have over 100,000 or 200,000 members. That means they probably have about 10,000 people from my ward alone. I better respond to those people. Matter of fact, I better go and see what it is that they would like for me to help them with. Now, let me go back to the example. I made the phone call. I made the text. Never got a response. Because it's not about me. It's not about me. Let's juxtaposition and to say we organized and they see us organizing. They hear about it. They hear the rumblings. They hear the numbers that we are organizing. I go back after they have discovered that that group has grown. I go back, make the same phone call, send the same text. what do you think is going to happen? They are going to respond not to me, but they are going to respond to the power that we have collectively. It is not about an individual. This is what we are failing to understand. It is not about an individual. It is not about someone who needs their ego stroked. It is not about someone who is only thinking about their own self-interest, which I told you is a toxic cancer, because whenever anybody is talking about self-interest, they mean they're disregarding the interest of everybody else. So this is not about self-interest. This is about a collective agenda and collective interest. But the fact is that if, in fact, we had 100,000 members, 200,000 people within the Democratic voting bloc, and I made that same phone call, there would have been a whole different response. Now, am I saying that they would have called back in 5 minutes? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that even if I called their office, because the person that's answering the phone, whether it's their secretary, clerk, however they identify with them, that person is going to say, Mark Wallace of 10 by 10 to Win called and asked if he could speak with you. Before he got back to his office, he'd have been on his phone calling, because it's not me that he's responding to. It is that 100,000 people, which he knows that a large chunk of those people live in his ward. And if he doesn't want to pay the price, he may not even care anything about me, may not even like me, which is not a prerequisite. I don't care about that. He may not care about me, may not like me, but the fact that he knows that we have 100,000 members or 200,000 members, there is at least 10,000 of them that are living in his ward. And as a body, if I were to go back to the body and say, well, you all wanted for me to have a conversation with this particular alderman about this particular issue, and we reached out to him and we left a message, and he did not respond to us at all. We keep note of that, of the ones that are not responding. Not responding doesn't mean you just return a phone call. Not responding also means that you are not responding to the demands of our community. So, as a body, we get together, we send a message that if they can't respond to us, that means that he doesn't find the broader community important enough. Then we know when election time comes who we will not be supporting. And that goes right on down the line. That is what you call real power, to be able to influence and impact public policy. Public policy is the equation of resources, money, that's coming back to our communities. And the person who is in the office is responsible for making sure that those resources do not pass our communities, that we have significant investment, which means that we can get industry here and provide career opportunities for people in our communities where they will be able to buy a car, they will be able to buy a home, they'll be able to take their family on vacation, they'll be able to save for their children's college, to educate their children, and they'll be able to support their communities. That is what we are gearing to, that we are going to make sure. We have to be in a position to make sure that when these dollars roll out, that there are industries that are in our communities, that our communities, people who reside in our communities, are able to benefit from those industries, those corporations that bring their businesses to our region, where we can have thousands upon thousands of people to start careers and retire from those companies. That's investment in people, but that's also power and influence in numbers. That's how we make those things happen. We do not make those things happen doing things the way that we continue to do things now, meaning that we are fighting in silos, that we have very little power. And when we go into these places, these offices, these commissioners or alderpersons or state reps, state senators, mayors, governors, and there's no representation behind what we're advocating for, there's going to be little that we will be able to get done. We can get masses of things done if we organize ourselves and not allow ourselves to get distracted, but to be laser focused on putting ourselves in positions of power for the transformation of our communities, like every other wealthy community in Chicago. There should not be any poor Black communities in Chicago. There should not be 47% of Black males between the ages 18 to 25 out of school and out of work. That should not exist. At 47% to their white male counterpart in the same city, in the same demographic, that is at 7%. Why? Because there's no plan. Why? Because we have not organized power to demand a plan. We haven't done it. So when people start talking about, well, we've got to put together an agenda. No, the agenda has to be organizing ourselves first. That's number one on the agenda. Because if we don't organize ourselves in a collective corporate manner, which is step one, then step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and so forth, don't matter. You cannot skip one to successfully get to 2. You cannot skip 2 if you are successfully trying to get to 3. Everything has a structure. And depending upon how well that structure is put together, depends on how well the outcomes and results that we're going to get. So I am saying to all of us that we have got to put together or put aside our idiosyncrasies. We've got to put aside our laziness. We got to put aside our despair. We have to put aside the negative idea. Oh, that how are we going to do this? There's no way that we can do this. Yes, we can. And I'm not trying to borrow from Barack Obama, but of course we can. If we simply got ourselves up and said to ourselves, we're not going to allow for this opportunity to get by us. We're not going to allow for these opportunities to escape us. We're going to do everything that we need to do. We have it within our reach. So that means that you and I have to go and speak to the people in our circles and our inner circles. And we have to admonish them that we have got to do things differently than we have been doing them if we plan to have our communities to flourish. And our communities can flourish. What I am telling you is not some Pollyannish dream. How many of you understand that no one running for a public office, no one in the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, or the state of Illinois can get into the seat without the support overwhelmingly of the Black community? You can't name one. You can't name one because it does not exist. It doesn't exist. Nobody can get elected if they don't have a large support from the Black community. So that means that every 2 to 4 years, they are coming around because they have to get our vote in order to win. I just think fundamentally that there is something wrong with us if we continue to allow for our votes to be manipulated, to be taken for granted. There's got to be something wrong with you and I if we continue down this pathway. Because we have what we need to break up some of these things that we see happening. We can affect things on a local level. We can also affect things on a national level. If we were to spend our time and commit ourselves to organizing people wherever we are, in all of those spaces that we are, if we started we would be able to demonstrate to ourselves let's forget about the politician, but we will be able to demonstrate to ourselves what massive strategic organizing look like and the influence that it has. Everybody in, nobody out. Whomsoever comes and somebody leaves, we are that much weaker. Every time somebody joins, we are that much stronger. And the voice of the people gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's all a matter of us organizing ourselves together as our own independent, democratic, black voting bloc. That's what it is. We put ourselves in a position, we will be able to impact elections all over the districts, from our cities to our villages, our counties, and our state. That is real power. Real power. All right. I went to church yesterday. I'm a former member of a congregation that I'm no longer a part of. And I am in prayer and seeking a new place to worship. And boy, I went yesterday and I had I really did enjoy the service, the interaction of the service. I really enjoyed it. And so we'll probably go there, between there and Trinity United Church of Christ, which I also enjoy. So we will be choosing a place that we'll be able to go to. But I had a great time yesterday. Boy, we had a glorious, glorious time. I'm not trying to proselytize to anybody. It's about what I'm talking about is about my faith commitment. And I had just a joyous time on yesterday, and I'm looking forward to visiting again, as well as visiting Trinity United Church of Christ. Well, I guess if I call Trinity United Church of Christ, I can tell you where I went. I went yesterday to Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, where the pastor there is Pastor Sharp, 30 young man who is about to turn 34. He's the pastor over there, and I imagine he must be doing a great job. Congregation seems to be pretty excited over there. So we're going to go back and visit sometime over at the ship that was originally founded by Clay Evans, and he is going to be recognized and honored down in Atlanta, that they were speaking about yesterday. And of course, I went to the life celebration services for this just beautiful person that I met many years ago over at Rainbow Push. And I did not know that she was actually a deacon at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, Deacon Linda Faye Davis Denard, who made her transition January 11th. And boy, did they celebrate her life on Friday. And it was very fitting because she was such a beautiful person. She was such a beautiful person. And I, when I found out and I saw the news where she had made her transition. I did not know that she was a cancer survivor for 10 years, especially the cancer, the type of cancer that she had, that we learned about, that that very few people live the length of period of time that she did with the type of cancer that she had. But I tell you, you're talking about some person who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. She made you feel like you were $1,000,000. Linda Faye Denard. She was a person who ran the media ministry and assisted Pastor Sharp. She also was the assistant to Pastor Jenkins when he was there, and I imagine for Pastor Evans. But she was just a beautiful, beautiful person. I know that every time that I saw her, every time I was in a room, she always would encourage me and made me feel like $1,000,000. So we celebrated her life on this past Friday. And we're also going to be celebrating the life of another beautiful woman who made her transition, Sister Vivian Dale, who was a member with me at our former church. And she made her transition the other day, and we'll be celebrating her life on next Saturday at the Gatlin's funeral home. Sister Vivian Dale made her transition, and another just beautiful person. So I know that that heaven has been enriched with two more beautiful souls, with Sister Denard and Sister Vivian Dale. So I'm eternally grateful to God for knowing both of these people. Now, again, I just wanted to emphasize, I'm going to open up the phone lines in case you all want to call in. But I don't want for us to be distracted. I really don't want us to be distracted. Yes, we have to talk about some of those things that they're doing, and bring attention to what they're doing. Certainly, to people who might not understand what it is they're doing and what their motivation is behind it. Most of their motivation is to try and castrate any gains that has happened. That happened to us a few times in this country during Reconstruction. We had 12 years of Reconstruction. At the end of the at the end of the Civil War. 12 years, and then they took it back. Richard Nixon administration supported the affirmative action, and then they took it back. And we started making gains in the Black community through the 1970s. And what did they do? They dropped crack cocaine in our community, the cheap drug of crack cocaine. They dropped it in our communities. They dropped it in our communities. Crack cocaine was $5 then. That came out in the late 1970s, certainly in the area where I grew up down in Richmond Heights in South Florida. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it's $5 now. It's the one thing that certainly survived inflation. Wonder why? And it decimated communities, Black communities throughout on the West Coast and on the East Coast, decimated communities. And now you have the felon in chief who is being propped up by the Project 2025 authors to be their implementer of what they are calling the 5th year of the Trump administration. And of course, he went on to, I guess, bless what they're doing. Of course, he said that he didn't know anything about it, didn't know the people involved, although, most of the people who were involved worked in his administration. Over 100 people worked in his administration that are co-authors of this 922-page manifesto. But he didn't know anything about it. But yet, according to Jeff Vogt, who is now in his administration, said that he gave them his blessings. Again, these are clips, and I'm going to maintain them because I want to remind you all of this throughout these 4 years of who these people are. They said what they were going to do, and they're attempting to do what they said that they're going to do. And if you didn't believe it, well, you'll believe it now, because they're going to show you. They're going to show you. Here's another clip of what he said, that Donald Trump is blessing their work, and then he'll come back and tell us about these so-called deportations that they're doing now. This is a part of their playbook. It's in the manifesto. And there are people who are surprised by it, but I'm not sure why. Maybe somebody can call me and help me to understand.
He's been at our organization.
Look at this.
He's been at our organization. He's raised money for our organization. He's blessed.
He's talking about Donald Trump. He's talking about he's talking about the felon in chief That's who that's who he's talking about. The felon in chief who has raised money for the work that they have done to put together this 922-page manifesto that they said that he does not know, that he said that he doesn't know anything about it. All right. You want to call me? 951-221-8221. 951-221-8221. And I'm going to play, last week we were on, I'm going to play this last clip because I didn't get a chance to play it of Dr. King's speech that he did about the drum major instinct, about misusing it. I want to play the last part of that because we didn't get a chance to play it. But here is what Project 2025, their idea of the ideal world deportation.
In an ideal world, I mean, I think we could save the country in a sense of, the largest deportation in history.
And even pornography.
We'd have a national ban on pornography if we could, right?
Yeah. These are the people that many people, over half of those that voted, 70-something million people, said that this is what would be better for our country. This would be better for our country. I know that is astonishing, but we cannot pretend as though we are surprised. We can't. Now, here is the final piece of Dr. King's speech that he did February the 4th, 1968, and he called it the drum major extreme. The drum major extreme. This is his closing of the drum major extinct.
If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics in physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace. Soul generated by love. And you can be that servant. I know a man, and I just want to talk about him a minute, and maybe you will discover who I'm talking about as I go down the way. Because he was a great one. He just went about serving. He was born in an obscure village. The child of a poor peasant woman. And then he grew up in still another obscure village where he worked as a carpenter until he was 30 years old. Then for 3 years, he just got on his feet and he was an itinerant preacher. And he went about doing some things. He didn't have much. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family. He never owned a house. He never went to college. He never visited a big city. He never went 200 miles from where he was born. He did none of the usual things that the world would associate with greatness. He had no credentials but himself. He was only when the tide of public opinion turned against him. They called him a rouser. They turned against him. They called him a rabble rouser. They called him a troublemaker. They said he was an agitator. He practiced civil disobedience. He broke injunctions. And so he was turned over to his enemies and went through the mockery of a trial. And the irony of it all is that his friends turned him over to them. One of his closest friends denied him. Another of his friends turned him over to his enemies. And while he was dying, the people who killed him gambled for his clothing, the only possession that he had in the world. When he was dead, he was buried in a borrowed tomb through the pity of a friend. 19 centuries have come and gone. Today, he stands as the most influential figure that ever entered human history. All the armies that ever marched, all the navies that ever sailed, all parts that ever, all kings that ever reigned together, not affected the life of men put together, have not affected the life of man on this earth as much as that one solitary life. His name may be a familiar one, but today I can hear him talking about him. Every now and then somebody says he's King of Kings. And again I can hear somebody saying he's Lord of Lords. Somewhere else I can hear somebody saying in Christ there is no east nor west. And then they go on and talk about in him there's no north and south, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide world. He didn't have anything. He just went around serving and doing good. This morning, you can be on his right hand and his left hand if you serve. It's the only way in. Every now and then, I guess all think richly about that day when we will be victimized with what is life's final common denominator. That's something that we call death. We all think about it, and every now and then I think about my own death, and I think about my own funeral, and I don't think of it in a morbid sense. Every now and then I ask myself, what is it that I would want said? And I leave the word to you this morning. If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word of song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, or if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. Yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side. Not for any selfish reason. I want to be on your right or your left side, not in terms of some political kingdom or ambition, but I just want to be there in love and in justice and in truth and in commitment to others so that we can make of this old world a new world.
did it.